It is the host with the most, KBK Capri, and we are back with another episode of the Wealthy and Healthy Podcast, home edition, where we talk about small lessons, right? And today I'm going to talk about 5 steps that everyone needs to take to opening your first business. In 2025, right, we're all in a space where we're thinking about bigger for ourselves, right? We're thinking about growing ourselves. We're thinking about exposure. And if you're not, you're just, living under a rock somewhere, right? This is the age of the entrepreneurs, right? People are replacing colleges with, courses and, personal education, right? You don't have to go to college to prove that you're someone anymore. You don't have to go to, hair school or barber college to be able to say that you could open a shop, right? You can simply just buy these courses online and take these certain type of courses, right? And everything is starting to become digitalized, right? Everything is starting to become, more about, what's your social media presence, right? How many followers do you have on TikTok, right? What are your views looking like, right? So when we talk about adapting to the game, right? We have to, make sure that we are, creating a certain environment to where we can always adapt and we can take every L as a lesson and we can follow trends, right? Because that's what most businesses are about, following trends, right? So, when we talk about following trends, it doesn't necessarily mean you're hopping on bandwagons and you're, sometimes you even get in a position where you're working with businesses or you're selling to customers that, are not, fitting your brand identity or even just your personal values, right? But when we talk about following trends, right, it's all about following the money, right? So I'm talking about marketing, new marketing strategies. I'm talking about new personal development strategies that are, known to bring in more customers, right? When we talk about how to sell more, right, or new selling strategies that are, are becoming booming now, right? Funnels are, were the biggest thing 2-3 years ago, right? Now we're starting to move more into, creating courses, but it's all still through that funnel, right? So you still can have certain type of systems and strategies that you use, but you always want to find new ways to win, right? So when you keep in mind that it's time to keep moving and it's time to keep progressing and it's time to start winning, right? You have to think about how you're going to open up your first business, right? So when we talk about opening up your first business, right, let's get down to it, right? So the first step to starting your first business in 2025 is creating an entrepreneurial mindset, right? That's meaning like understanding your why, right? Why do you want to become an entrepreneur, right? How is this going to affect you, right? Looking at everything in a business sense, right? Entrepreneur mindset is what is going to take you from A to Z, right? When you keep in mind that you are an entrepreneur and everything is in pursuit of your progression and your business's progression, right? Nothing is really too big of a risk, right? Nothing really seems too hard or too much, right? Because you always know what's going to be on the other end of it. Either you're going to learn something out of it or you're going to make some money or you might do both, right? So when you're understanding your why, you can understand, just where you're going, right? And then that brings me to getting away from distractions. This is a big one, right? You have to understand what needs to go, what needs to stay. You have to understand that it's time to lock in, right? It's not time to go to the club. It's not time to go out with friends. It's not time. Even sometimes it's not even time to go chill with the family, right? Sometimes you got to lock in. Sometimes you give yourself deadlines or you set goals for yourself and you have to stay committed to that. So getting rid of distractions is a huge part of that entrepreneurial mindset, right? Because in everyday life, right, people get so consumed by, social media. They get so consumed by, TV, Netflix, right? We don't understand the aspect of locking in and actually being committed to something that is going to be in pursuit of us, right? We're doing it for us, right? We don't really understand how to do that, right? We always, say I might go say I'm going back to school, right? I've seen this all the time, right? People go back to school and they spend more time on that than they might spend on, going to start a business, right? Why go back to school and go find another job, right? Go to school and go start a business, right? So that all comes down to that entrepreneurial mindset, right? And that brings me to creating that positive environment. When you create that positive environment, your entrepreneurial mindset is going to accelerate, right? It's going to boost. When you see more, you do more, right? And when you see more, you can be more, right? So create that positive environment, right? Do not, be driven from negativity, right? The next thing I want to talk about is sharing your talent. Find community, right? When we talk about an entrepreneurial mindset, right, we have to talk about the community, right? We have to talk about our God-given talent, right? Why? And I think this is probably the most important one, right? Because when you are confident in your talent, right, you can go find your community, right? And once you find your community, you can then create a lifetime audience, a potential lifetime audience, a potential lifetime customer, right? A potential lifetime fans, right? Potential lifetime people that are going to look at and see what you do and want to keep buying your products, right? Or keep understanding, or keep learning from you, right? So, that was number one, creating an entrepreneurial mindset. Let's move on to number two, right? Understanding credit. When we talk about credit, right? And I talk about how important credit is all the time, right? But I think it's important to understand how credit works in your business, right? So when we understand credit, we can understand how to use it, right? So let's talk about where you're at financially, right? That's where you got to start, right? When we talk about starting your business or the foundation, right? You got to understand where you're starting to know where you want to go, right? So where are you financially, right? Credit wise, right? Do you have a lot of credit cards? Is your utilization high, right? Or do you not have enough credit cards, right? Or do you not have the right credit cards? That's a more important question, right? Do you not have the right credit cards with the right institutions, right? That have the right products for you and your business, right? If I want to specialize, if I'm going to do like say I'm going to do a courier business, or say I'm going to do something that has something to do with an auto loan, right? So say I'm maybe a Turo business, right? I want to go get into institutions that specialize with auto loans, right? Or give the highest, the highest limits, or the highest, or the lowest APRs, the lowest interest rates, right? For auto loans, right? So that's important when we talk about understanding where you are financially and credit wise, right? And then you have to understand where you want to be, right? So if I understand that, I'm not really doing good with my, my credit utilization, right? I can know where to go from there, right? And where you want to go is important because you know what steps to take, right? But once you get there, right, you got to understand how credit is going to work for you, right? How are you going to use credit to create income? How are you going to use debt to create income? Right, that's extremely important, right? So when you understand that credit is just a means to make more credit, right? And credit can equal income or whatever you want it to equal, right? You can understand how to leverage it, right? So always think in the back of your mind how to leverage it, how to leverage your personal credit, how to leverage your business credit, right? You can leverage your personal credit and business credit. That's a PG, right? You can leverage your business credit to go start any other business, right? Or go leverage it to not have to use your personal funds, right? And not have to worry about your personal credit or anything like that getting affected by that, right? And you can operate your business with less worry, right? You can have a little bit more cushion, right? So that's very important when you understand how to make credit work for you, right? And what you have to understand throughout this process, especially when you're just starting, right? Because like I said, once you get into that entrepreneurial mindset, you're going to see things start to shift. You're going to understand that all these things and all these opportunities have been in front of you your whole life, and you just have never been exposed to it, right? And I know when I was first coming up, that it was making me mad, right? It was making me irritated. I'm like, why weren't we taught about these things, right? Why didn't I know these things coming up, right? So you have to understand what's standing in your way of funding, right? Understand that the banks are here to give us money, right? Um, I say this a lot, and I wanna introduce it right here on the podcast, right? We run the banks, right? As the consumer, we run the banks, right? And here's the thing, here's what I like to say, right? The banks run the world, right? The banks run the world, but we run the banks, right? So as the consumer, we have the power, right? If all the banks were to, collapse and close today, right? Or if everybody wanted to pull their money out of the banks today, right? The system and the economic system as we know it would ultimately crash, right? So the banks are ran by the public's confidence in the banks, right? So once we understand that the banks are working for us, right, we can understand like I have the power, right? So you have to empower yourself, right? So understanding your credit is very important, right? So what is standing in the way of you getting your funding, right? So that's number two, understanding your credit, right, and what it can do for you potentially, right? Let's move on to number three, forming your business identity and your business entity. This is important, right? Because you want to look good on paper. You want to be official, right? You want to be a business owner. You don't want to be someone who's running your hair salon out of your mama's house and then you go ask for 25K in funding, right? Or 100K or whatever the case may be, right? So forming your business identity is where I want to start, right? So who do you want to sell to? Who do you want to sell to? Who do you want to buy from you, right? Who do you want to be like, I bought this product from, K Capri's credit repair program and it changed my life, right? Who would you be proud to sell to, right? And who would you want to be proud to buy from you, right? It's very important. And what's your brand message, right? So if I know that I'm in the repair space and I want to teach people how to create income with debt, my brand message is off bat. I know what I need to say, right? I'm selling to young entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs who want to learn how to use debt to create income, right? So that would be my brand message, right? So start to think about what you want to do, who you want to sell to, and how you can make that pitch to them. Because that's what a brand message is, right? It's basically a pitch to your potential clients or your potential audience, right? So think about what your brand message is going to be, right? And who are you becoming in the process? Because your brand identity has to follow your personal values, right? That's where we get personal brands and where we get brands or businesses that we have no problem building, right? And we are proud to say is ours, right? And we don't mind staying up till 5 a.m., 6 a.m. in the morning, just to make sure that those letters are sent out, right? So understand who you're becoming in the process, right? Because it's very important, because you want to create this, you want to say that you created something, right? So make sure you do it right, make sure it aligns with your personal values, right? So understand who you're becoming in the process. That's going to give you a strong brand and business identity, right? And then that brings me to setting up your entity, right? So first things first, I could dive into this, pretty deep, but I'm not going to get too deep. But one thing you want to understand is what kind of entity you want to form, right? So if you are looking to just do something very small, right? Usually side businesses, I would recommend getting under the LLC, right? If you're looking to buy a business, you're looking to get big, your personal brand started, right? I would recommend getting an S corp or a C corp, right? And I would recommend getting age LLCs, age C corps, right? And S corps, right? Because you can get automatic, credit history, right? And then you can go straight into the building the business credit part of that, right? Because if you don't have history, essentially you don't have much, and you're gonna have to go with starter cards or startup grants. And number one, you're really swinging your bat there, and you're not necessarily getting the highest limits, right? You're getting the startup, right? You're getting the things that you need to start up, right? And you might be in the process where you're ready to scale, right? So that's why you got to understand what kind of entity and what kind of things you want to have when, or what kind of tax write-offs or what kind of tax bracket you want to be in, right? When you talk about forming your entity, right? And that brings me to getting your business address, getting your virtual address, your mailbox, right? Getting your phone number, right? Your 1-800 number. Um, Getting your registered agent, right? There's so many different things. I'm actually going to drop the business checklist down below. If you guys want to just, if you're already at the point where you're ready to set up your LLC, right? There's a business checklist below. I'm going to drop that. It's free. And you just check everything off, right? This is going to be all you need to, set up your business entity, right? Bringing me to number 4. This one is what's going to, this one's what's going to create your this is what's going to create your discipline, right? This is what is going to make or break your business, right? So number 4 is crafting your schedule. What does your day look like? As an entrepreneur, what does your day start off as, right? Do you have a time that you wake up? Me, I don't have an alarm, right? I just wake up and I get things done. But that works for me. Sometimes, I know a lot of people who wake up at 5 a.m., right? I know a lot of people who don't wake up till 8 a.m. and they still have a productive day, right? So whatever works for you, what does your day look like, right? Everybody has different things that they got going on in their life. Some people have night jobs, some people have overnight jobs. So when they're going to bed, you're waking up, right? When they're going into work, you're just going to bed, right? So there are certain ways that you can craft your schedule, right? So what does your day look like, right? When do you have the time? Right. So that's very important. And what I want to ask you is, when do you have the time, but also when do you need to make that time? Right. So understanding when it's time to say, okay, I need to lock in. Tonight I'm not going to sit and watch. a TV show, right? Tonight, I'm not going to go out. I'm going to sit in front of this computer. I'm going to sit in front of this journal or sit in front of these numbers, and I'm going to figure out where I'm moving on and what my next move is going to be. Sometimes you got to understand when to make the time, right? So, how do you make this into your routine? How do you create a routine to where you are putting everything into your business, right? Don't just wake up and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do today. No, have weekly goals, have daily goals, right? And however you get there is how you get there, right? That's one thing I always like to say. Don't be someone who has every single minute of your day accounted for, right? Have time to make mistakes, have time to take breaks, have time to understand where you need to go, have time to reevaluate, right? So always set goals, right? Don't set deadlines, right? And then once and one thing I want to mention is once you get something into your routine, routines then become easy, right? When you wake up in the morning and you go straight to the shower and you brush your teeth, right? After a while, it just becomes like second nature, right? Just like, when you wash your hands after you use the restroom, right? That becomes second nature after a while, right? So after a while, that's going to become easy, right? At first, old habits are hard to break. So you got to understand what you got to do, right? You got to understand what it takes, right? That's where you get your discipline, right? That's where you start to build your entrepreneurship, right? You start to become that entrepreneur that you wanted to be, right? So number 5 is my favorite part. This is the best part of entrepreneurship, right? Going all in. Let's talk about dedication, right? Let's talk about what it takes. Going all in when it's time to make that bread, right? When we talk about sticking to your goals and keeping them in mind every time you make a move, every time you go outside, every time you think about swiping your credit card or your debit card, every time you think about any decision, you have to understand, is it in pursuance of my goals in my business, right? Am I doing this? Because once you make it work for you and it starts to build the life that you want, right? Say you want to go travel, say you want to buy your mom a house, say you want to send your kids to college, right? Say you want to do the things that you always wanted to do, right? You have to keep that in mind every time you make a move, right? Every time you spend some money, right? Learning how, you can create value is how you create income, right? So once you create value, you can turn it into income, right? And, that takes you into becoming a brand, right? Like I said, when we create that brand identity, right, you have to make sure it aligns with your personal values, right? So become a brand, put your name on it. Put your story on it. So I talk about this. I talked about this in one of my very earlier episodes, right? And uh I talked about becoming a brand, right? And how it aligns with your personal values, right? And how you have to create income through your brand, right? So creating your brand identity is very important, right? And just sticking to it and keeping that in mind, right? And when you go all in, right, you're going to start to see results, right? When you go all in and you say, no matter what happens, no matter how many failures I get, I'm going to keep going, right? That's where you can start to find a new you, essentially, right? And that's where you become that entrepreneur, right? And that's how you set up a successful business, right? We focus too much on the money, we focus too much on the Facebook ads, we focus too much on the startup grants and the business credit cards, and we don't focus enough on what it takes to actually start a business to where you can manage it, right? When we talk about why most businesses fail, right, it's about funding. But when you don't know how to when you don't know how to make credit work for you, and then once you get your credit right and you don't know, excuse me, let me back up. If you go get your credit right and you don't know how to make it work for you, right, you're gonna always hit that brick wall. You're gonna always hit that wall if you don't know how to put it in your schedule, and you don't know and you don't understand how to create a entrepreneurial environment around yourself and around your family and around your community, right? Nothing is going to work for you, right? So those were the 5 steps to creating any business, right? This is for any business. I don't care if you're in the service providing, I don't care if you're a doctor, I don't care if you are a lash tech, I don't care if you're a chef, right? This is what works, right? This is how you create that foundation to where you can start any business and you can go get the funding and you can learn how to scale it, right? Because that's where we want to get, right? We want to scale. right? So, that's the 5 steps to opening your first business in 2025. Let me know how y'all feeling, right? Tell me if this helped you in any way. If you already opened a business, tell me how you felt about this. If this helped you in any way, if this kind of made you want to take a step back or it made you want to go harder, right? Tell me how this worked for you. If this inspired you and made you want to start your business, let me know what type of business you're starting below. All right, let me know. I want to know everything, right? But yeah, it's KDK Capri, and let me know. Oh, y'all, that capped off the first episode of the 30-day credit and entrepreneur empowerment challenge, right? In the next 30 days, I'm going to be dropping a video every single day talking about how to empower us for learning about credit and us as entrepreneurs, right? This is from an entrepreneur still in the field every single day running these plays, right? So I'm going to teach you what I learned. I'm going to teach you what it takes. I'm going to teach you how to get there, who you need to meet, who you need to talk to, who you need to stop talking to, and we are going to get this bread in 2025, right? Like I said in the video, if you are looking and you already started your business, right, and you want a business checklist, right, or you are about to start your business, right, I want you guys to get the free business checklist below, right? Go click the link below, right? Also, if you are looking to start your credit repair journey and you know that you need to start by pulling your credit report, click the link below. You can get a 7-day free trial for my free score now, right? Click the link below. You're going to get your bread, right? Next, if you are looking to get into debt, right? You want to learn how debt works, right? You want to be debt free because it is possible. It's very extremely possible, right? And the richest people do it every day, right? So if you're looking to get into that, you want to get your intro, you want to learn about the basics, you want to learn about the definitions, you want to start empowering yourself in 2025 when it comes to credit, click the link below, get the debt free guide. It is $47, best $47 you're going to ever spend, y'all. Right? So tap in. My name is KDK Capri, and I'm going to be back with another episode tomorrow.